Walt, Waymo's getting ready to roll the Ojai out. No, it's not Ojai wine for everybody, but they're getting ready to roll out the Chinese-made Zeekr, aka the Ojai, to everybody. While they do that, Texas pulled back the curtain on autonomous vehicles and autonomous trucks, so we got some good data there. And then I'm going to put my honorary light shed hat on. The add a plus to everything is going from media to autonomy, so we're going to break that down today. But let's start with Ojai. What do you know, Walt?
Well, for our longtime listeners, in the earliest episodes of Autonomy Markets, the Ojai was what you call the unforced error of Waymo. Why? Because it was a Chinese vehicle, and we were obviously concerned about the issues that existed between China and the United States. Now, since then, the president has allowed TikTok to continue to operate in the United States. He had a meeting over in China. We don't know if anything has come of that. But the bottom line is, Google is moving and Waymo is moving forward with deploying these Ojais, and they're all over socials this week. Obviously, they don't profile that it's a Chinese EV, but, in several markets across the U.S. So, what do you want to update your unforced error? Is it still an unforced error? Can this still come to bite them in the posterior?
Fancy words for a fancy man. Yes, it is still an unforced error, and I stand by that. If you look at the announcements where Waymo is going to deploy them, California, blue state. Arizona, purple state. What's missing? Red state. It's still politically divisive.
Wait a minute. I thought there was some tweets about Phoenix. Where does Phoenix fit? Where does Arizona as a state fit in that spectrum you were just talking about?
Arizona is a purple state leaning blue. So it is a purple state. It is not a red state.
What else is interesting about Phoenix is that in that market, you have Waymos some Waymos are on Uber's network, and Waymos are on the Waymo network. So now if there's Ojai in that market, do you think Uber customers will be able to hail an Ojai, or will those cars only be deployed for the fleet that is used to support the Waymo app in Phoenix?
I would say, based on all of the back and forth bludgeoning happening in the media, only going to be available on the Waymo app.
I think I agree with that. The other, and by the way, we'll have to go to Phoenix to check it out, or maybe we'll deploy Alex Roy to do some test rides for us. Does he do test rides? We'll get him out there to see with both apps and see which one they'll go on. So, this is not a huge shock. Obviously, we knew that the inventories of the Jaguars were limited. I think last week, maybe it was the week before, when I was out in San Francisco, I posted a picture of a massive depot, a Waymo depot that we saw, and those that zoomed in could see that, there was a lot of Ojais that were there. We have, friends of ours that are flying drones at the Magna plant. I always want to say Magma. So we knew that, those volumes were down. So do you think that's where we're at now, that there's no more new Jags being deployed in the market, and it's only going to be Ojai, so that if there are new markets announced, like some of those top 50 markets that we previously identified, they will be launched with only Ojais, or will they redeploy them with Jags? And if it's a red state, would they just start to shift inventory around? They'll maybe take some Jags from Austin and send them to, whatever the state. How's this all going to play out, Grayson?
Texas is a red state, so I do not see any scenario in which Governor Abbott of Texas will allow a Chinese-made vehicle from Waymo to operate there. Okay, so put that out there. But yes, I think you're going to have a political divide inside of Waymo, where Ojais will go to blue states or purple states, and Jaguars will go to red states until the Hyundai vehicles enter the fleet.
I have nothing but great respect for Governor Abbott, but I do want, and he did a great job speaking at Forward Fort Worth, made a lot of great points about the great state of Texas. And obviously, Tesla has done great things there, thanks to his partnership. I will point out, though, there was a data center, I think, around the Fort Worth area that I think is getting some community pushback because of the same issues that are happening in many states. So, who knows what can happen in Texas? But again, getting back to my earlier question, for new states or new cities that get added, will they start to mix shift and take Jags out of existing markets, whether it's San Francisco or Texas, and to launch with Jags to avoid this issue? Or since our Jag inventory is now, effectively capped, can you imagine new cities that only launch with the Ojai?
Yes, I can imagine new cities only launch with the Ojai. Based on the drone footage that we've seen, I'm going to make an assumption here. I'm assuming there's probably a couple hundred Jaguars laying around, but yes, you will most likely see the first launch cities probably occur in the EU because of the regulatory environment there, unless you start to see. Let's not forget, when I was in Vegas a few weeks ago, I spotted an Ojai driving around, and then when I was in Detroit a month or two ago, I saw an Ojai driving around. So you'll probably have a city here, a city there in the US, but I would assume that most of those Zeekrs will probably get deployed overseas to start.
And when you saw that Ojai, did you have the same reaction when we first found that Waymo plant in Austin, where you're like, I found you? Did you say that when you were in the car saying, I found you, when you saw the Ojai? And by the way, I also saw an Ojai on the highway when I was in San Francisco. I just couldn't whip my phone out fast enough.
See? Nope. I said, I got you. And I said to the Uber gentleman, I said, please stop and pull over. Whoa, 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 whoa. I said, no, I have to get a photograph of that. Walt will be very mad at me if I don't get a photograph. And so I gave him a nice tip and he pulled over. And that's one of the very few times I actually do take a human-driven vehicle, because I was coming from the airport. But I did get the photo, and I said, I got you. And I even made a hat, the inspector hat now, just to point out great moments out like that.
Funny story for me, when I was in the Valley last week, I had an Uber driver. I asked him, so what do you think of all these Waymos? He's like, Waymos? What's a Waymo? Literally had no idea. Anyway, let's get to some numbers, though. Because, with this Waymo stuff, I think have some data in terms of the number of cars, and maybe that'll give us a sense of whether they're out of Jags. I think the last number that we got earlier this month was that there was, I think it was 3,791 to be exact cars on the market. I assume that's as of April. To give people a sense of timing, back in, I think, November of 25 was the last time we heard, September, October, whatever. I think it was like 2,500 in November of 25. So if you're doing simple math for those of you at home, you can use your AI. You can do it in your head. You can use your abacus. That's about 250 cars a month. That puts them on pace, if they maintain this pace, and if Magna continues to crank out these Ojais, that they'll do 5,800 whatever cars, let's say close to 6,000. As a point of context, in my Lightshed 2022 predictions, which span the globe of TNT predictions, we predicted doubling or more than doubling of the Waymo cars from 2,500 to, I guess, 5,000. So they look to be on track at doing that. I guess the bigger question, though, Grayson, is like, you end the year, let's say, with 6,000. Meanwhile, Tesla's not really advancing their scale. What becomes a lead that's hard for others to catch up? Is 6,000 enough? Or are we still being frustrated and wanting Waymo to start adding 500 or 1,000 a month as opposed to 250?
First of all, Walt, 2022 was 4 years ago. You meant to say 2026.
Oh, brother.
I have to play the inspector.
It's been a long week. I apologize.
I see the inspector could uncover all sorts of different things, and I uncovered a 4-year gap there. Yes, and since those 4 years, they have doubled it, so your prediction is correct. I don't necessarily think the number to watch for is the vehicle count. To me, is watch for wait times. That's the number for Waymo. Watch for wait times. As more vehicles get added to the fleet and more cities come online, do wait times continuously stay low? That is the thing to watch for. And if they do stay low and they don't stay service busy, can't get car, they'll be fine. But that's the metric to watch is wait times.
I'm gonna exaggerate here. I don't care about wait times. I don't really mean I don't care about wait times. Obviously, wait times are important. But I think a lot of times people get overly focused on, is Waymo competitive with Uber? Because when things are busy, there's a 15-minute wait time versus a 5 minutes. Relax. Like, those cars that they have on the road cost way too much to have a real business model. We're still, in like a prove-out mode. And I think we talked about this on a recent podcast. To me, it's better for them to crank out a couple hundred cars, get a new market, establish the beachhead, be the person that's effectively determining what those local rules are in the market. So if they're doing 250 a month, thanks to Magna, then they can basically add a new geographic market in the U.S., because this is where it is. Obviously, overseas, they can do the same, one a month. And you keep adding one a month, one a month, one a month, one a month. Look, the ultimate unlock, relax, everybody. Even the Ojai is not your scale volume. Is it a lot cheaper? The big unlock is we're going to wake up one day and Waymo is going to have a new deal with a new sensor stack that's even smaller, that's even cheaper, that's even fewer sensors, that will deliver 1,000 a month, 1,500 a month. And then rather than adding 300 cars in new markets, all of a sudden they're going to double the volume in San Francisco, open up the highways, get the airports in the right location, and you're going to see the real impact of Waymo. Anyone commenting about like, oh, I think, Waymo's growth is moderating in California and the wait times is like, I think you need to see the bigger picture of what's happening here in terms of proving out a technology before you get to the model that is the true scale model that's going to generate the billions of EBITDA and free cash flow. It's like criticizing Uber, whatever it was, 8 years ago and saying they're not going to be profitable or they can't do this or they can't do that. You're missing the big picture. They're still in the prove out the technology mode. And at the same time, getting a lead on any of the competition out there, whether it's Tesla or the field that's running right now.
Let's just call a spade and use data here. Waymo's the leader. Any way you want to cut it. Their driver out in 11 cities, driver out, no safety attendant, and their growth is not moderating. In fact, if you actually look at the data, you can see their growth is accelerating. So you're right to point that out. And why not just go open more markets and control it as individuals try and throw up political and regulatory roadblocks and get there before somebody else and control the narrative? So you're right.
So a year ago, I would have been, if you went back to our podcast from a year ago, whatever episode it is, I would have been criticizing them for saying like, get a new OEM, get an OEM. It still takes time. And by the way, it's still a criticism. However, in the interim, like Tesla has not delivered on scaling up in any market, right? 20 cars in whatever, in Austin. Like the most successful, I think, of the Uber partners in the United States could be Nuro. And let's define success for Nuro and Lucid, which is going to be a challenging partner to deal with. If they had 100 cars in a market by mid next year, right? That is a huge win, right? For Nuro, right? And for Uber. Now put that in the context of, okay, if there's 6,000 cars at the end of the year, adding 250 cars, like do your math on where Waymo is going to be at that point. When you're delivering 100 cars, in the market, think about the number of markets and the number of cars that Waymo will have. So I think, because the others have not, whether it's, and again, not to pick on Nuro, because I think they're probably one of the more advanced and successful ones. And they perhaps are a key for Uber's success, if not survivability, right? But in the case of Tesla, it's the same thing, right? They're not hitting scale. Now, look, Tesla bulls will claim like, yeah, I get you. But as soon as that unlock happens, and we've seen it, you and I have personally been to that plant, they can crank out I'm trying to think of a better word, a lot ton, a bunch ton of cars. That's fine. We just have to get to that point. And it's still here. It's May, right? They're not going to hit my initial prediction on whatever it was, 500 cars in Austin over the next 30 days. Sorry, it's just not going to happen.
No, it's not. And I'm very proud. I'm proud of you to be proud of your mom because you didn't say a bad word. You did the very good behavior. So I hope you get a brownie point for that behavior. You bring up the valid point around scale. Waymo is the only robotaxi company that is legally domiciled in the United States that's scaling. Their biggest competitors right now are WeRide and Pony, both Chinese-based. That's truly... Those are the three that are scaling at the moment.
And let's be clear, Waymo is still ahead of those companies in terms of number of cars. Like service area, obviously for WeRide is very large, but so are wait times. And having to get, take public transportation to get a WeRide. So there's pluses and minuses, I think, of all. But to me, I'm just focused on what the competition is and implications. And again, acknowledging in the case of Tesla, it's just not happening. right? Does that mean we're not having successful rides? Sure, we'll get to that later in terms of our friend David Moss and his trip, across Canada and what that means for where Tesla is.
Before we get into the data that Texas revealed, I do want to mention, I did forget Baidu. Baidu is also scaling globally, and they do a really good job. Thank you to the Baidu IR team for releasing their SEC filings. So they're also there competing globally. Well, let's move on to Texas. The Texas Department of Motor Vehicles, Transportation, has released data, now part of a new regulatory thing. And I want to emphasize the point that you brought up. You said 20 Tesla vehicles in Austin. We know from this report that Tesla is only currently operating 42 vehicles in the state of Texas. 42. It's not as big as individuals first expected.
Yeah, not even close. And what are some of the other numbers in terms of Texas vehicles?
So we're just going to go down the list here, and then we'll talk about it. Waymo, 577 vehicles. AV Ride, this shocked me, 317 vehicles. Nuro, good for Nuro, 47 vehicles. Moya America, which are the vans that you and I have seen were in Austin, 12 vehicles. May Mobility, which you've experienced in Arlington, 18 vehicles. Zoox, 35 vehicles. We don't know how many are the Toaster versus the Highlanders. Interesting data. I mean, we have truck data. We'll get on in a minute. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, I'm flexing because I've been in every one of those cars except for Moya. So, point of fact. Secondly, on AV Ride, 317 vehicles. No chance that I think that's referring to the little robots that are probably driving around. That's the vehicles they're referring to. I find that very hard to believe. I mean, I was in Dallas. We did see the cars. Like, I don't know what other cities they're at, but we obviously rode AV Ride in both Austin and Dallas. That seems unbelievable unless they're including the those kind of street whatever, the food delivery things, right?
So I was blown away by the numbers, so I went and did some research on this. The sidewalk delivery bots do not have VIN numbers. And AV Ride has VIN numbers listed. So I don't know how they're getting that number.
I mean, I don't know. That one just does not pass the sniff test. I am sorry. Is there someone in the Texas DMV that we can write to and get some verification on this? If there's 317 vehicles, are they on the road? Like, do they have 317 employees that are driving around with these things? Do they even have the 150 employees if half of them are parked? Like, I mean, I'm sorry, that just doesn't pass. And look, the more important thing is, again, for those that got here via Google search or whatever, go back or whatever, look in the library. Both Grayson and I have been in AV Rides in Dallas. There's a safety driver. They've got issues, right? And obviously there's a NHTSA investigation with some of those issues that have already existed in Dallas. It's also kind of a point of reference, like, doing a test ride from their headquarters where you're quote unquote on rails versus once these things get deployed, it's like night and day. Like, in the wireless industry, we had those same issues. Like, someone launches a city, they take you out in a van and they drive around where all the cell sites are strong, and like, okay, that doesn't really tell you how it's going to perform when it's out in the market, and then when it's out with 10 cars. And I think my new milestone is 100 cars. 100 cars in a market. Let's see how you perform. Let me pick the destination, then we'll decide whether it's operational. So anyway, thank you to Texas for the data. So yeah, Tesla 42 doesn't cut it. Not 100, not real, right? I mean, yeah, we tested it. It's fine, but like, okay, until you're comfortable enough to get it to 100, then we'll start talking again. AV Ride, Nuro 47, even Nuro 47 seems like a lot. Do you think they have? Yeah, I guess that's doable in Houston. You were in Houston. Do you see a bunch of Nuros popping around there?
Yeah, so Nuro, Houston's a test market for Nuro, and if you go back in the Wayback Machine, you might say, well, why Houston? Nuro had a pilot with Domino's for the little R2 robot that ran around there, so they have deep Houston relationships, and they have the infrastructure there to deploy it.
And may I've been in the vehicles 18 sounds exactly right. So. Whatever, it is what it is. What other data are we going to get from Texas on this stuff in terms of accidents, interventions, whatever?
We're going to get complaint data where if an individual files a complaint, that data is all made public. I ingested it into the AI algorithm I wrote, so we'll talk about it here. So we're going to get that. And now you don't have to go.
Hold on. Yeah. Does that complaint data put the name of the person who's making the complaint, because you and I both know that there have been complaints made in Austin against Tesla that tie back to people whose names are very interesting.
Very interesting is an understatement on that. I went through every log that the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles made public. There was not one complaint yet. You got to use the keyword there, yet. But if there is, we're going to get a notification, and we will look at it, and perhaps.
And now you've got Omega checking, so you should have Omega shout out when our good friend, maybe not so good friend, files his next complaint.
And Omega has a YouTube API, so it does look at videos that go on YouTube and correlates it.
Love it. Okay, good job, Omega. What about the truck stats? Anything interesting there?
So the truck stats were very interesting. No surprise here. Aurora has the most trucks on the road. They have 91 trucks. Kodiak has 33 trucks. Bot Auto has 12 trucks. Torque Robotics, the Daimler subsidiary, has 25 trucks. Wabi has 13 trucks. Stack AV, which is SoftBank subsidiary, has 31 trucks. Plus AI has 12 trucks. International has 8 trucks registered to the OEM out of their San Antonio R&D office.
I mean, also very interesting numbers. Torque, I'm still waiting for you guys to put me in a truck. I keep hearing these promises from Peter. Love to get in it. Wabi, 13 trucks. I'd love to see that as well. Although I'm not sure they're doing trucks or cars now. Stack AV, like hugely backed by Masa. Pretty important, but like silent in terms of information. I spent some time, with Chris Urmson and Don Burnett and the Bot Auto team and Peter, like all within the last couple of weeks. This group of executives is having an impact on me, Grayson. And when I had to drive to Philly again in my Tesla, fully supervised, but also no interventions, I just kept noticing the amount of trucks on the road. And I think, I have to really start to reconsider the size of that trucking market relative to this auto market and the price protection that they have in replacing, these workers, especially on these very long haul things. I mean, it is a sizable market. I think they just don't get the attention, in part because they're $5, $10 stocks, smaller market caps versus a Waymo that has an implied market capitalization that's huge. We obviously know what Tesla's market capitalization. People get in Waymo so they understand the magic of it. But like in terms of making real money and this inflection point that we've talked about in the last couple of weeks, I don't know, man. It seems like it's a physical AI segment that's getting largely overlooked. That's really, just about to get unlocked. Obviously not a lot of trucks, but I think it's a turning point. We just got to hope that these OEMs on the trucking world are on board with this expansion.
You have to hope. I went through the list. PACCAR wasn't listed there, but International was. And I think what you're seeing, the fact that International has the R&D facility in San Antonio, they've registered with the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. You're starting to see the one that everybody wants, the Daimler Cascadia. They're making more noise. They're making more news. The Daimler Truck CEO is talking about it on an earnings call, so very positive sign there. And then we'd be remiss, and we don't talk about Sasco. Sasco, I got a bone to pick, buddy. I went through the Texas Department of Motor Vehicle data. Volvo Autonomous Solutions is not listed. What's going on? You got to get on that list and give us some data. So they're coming along as well.
Absolutely, and always looking forward to whenever we're going to get to see those operations that Sasco's got there cranking out those trucks off the line.
I want to see it, but at some point, trucking's going to have its time in the sunlight. It's just a matter of when, and I believe in this industry for a long time.
Yeah, sure. And look, bottom line though is like when they report quarters, it's like $1 million in revenue, right? It's not like setting off any, and the trading of the stocks is not big enough. But like as you ramp the revenue, as long as you can fund that growth and ramp the revenue, I think people will recognize it. There's always, and look at AI and the quote unquote enterprise segment that is driven, Claude's ability, or Anthropic, his ability to raise a ton of money from a revenue growth that's coming from the enterprise. There's some parallels here in terms of trucking effectively being the enterprise version of autonomy, relative to the consumer applications that obviously Waymo and others are chasing.
I like that. Did Opus 4.8 write that line for you?
It did not. It did not.
But Anthropic is a lab, and it seems that everybody has to have a lab these days. Wayve announced a lab. What do we know about that?
What do they say? Orange is the new pink, or this is the new. I mean, labs is like, I keep, Uber Labs, I get, but Wayve Labs, like, what is Wayve? First of all, let's look at what, from Alex Kendall, I guess, his introduction of Wayve Lab. It's dedicated. This sounds like the SpaceX S1, dedicated to advancing frontier embodied AI and accelerating the path to general purpose intelligence in the physical world. We want to create the best environment for embodied AI research. Wayve Labs combines global scale driving data, real world deployment, and frontier scale compute to create a uniquely. What does this all mean, Grayson? Are they basically, because labs in the context of Uber is creating driving data that I think they can sell or give to their autonomy partners. Like, what is Wayve? What do you think Wayve Labs is? And is this the media version of HBO Max Plus or whatever it is, where everyone was putting a Max or Plus at the end of their streaming names?
What this is, in a nutshell, Jensen sells more GPUs.
I mean, you got to get in line. It's not like you can just go and buy some GPUs. Like you put your order in for GPUs now, and you'll get them 3 years from now. I just had a meeting with América Móvil, one of the largest telcos in Latin America, and they've got all these data centers. I'm like, look, you could become like CoreWeave and buy chips or buy compute, but you wouldn't get that compute for a couple of years. So maybe just lease your data centers to whoever, to like one of the hyperscalers. Same thing here. Like, you can't just like go and buy a bunch of compute. Even though they obviously are your partner, like, I just don't know what the point of labs is. Is this something to generate revenue? Is this like a plus, where they're basically trying to sell data to generate the money that they need to develop their autonomy? And why not just focus on getting your product out? Like, why have a labs business? Get a car out that operates without a driver in it and sell it to a Robotaxi fleet. What is labs?
To me, labs is research. And I think that if you look at the private market valuations of OpenAI, you look at the private market valuations of Anthropic and other frontier labs, everybody wants to have a lab, in my opinion, to increase the valuation of the company. Look, we're doing frontier level research. So everybody wants to have a lab, but when is everybody going to have a lab plus and then a lab plus plus? Well, your lab's not a plus. Mine's a plus plus.
I'm not letting this go, Grayson. Like, you're doing research to understand autonomy? No crap. Is that one okay, Mom? Like, no crap. Of course you're doing research. Get the product out. By the way, on this Stellantis thing, which we didn't talk about last week, I saw a meme this week about showing the aerodynamics of a lobster compared to a Jeep. And the lobster, just to tell you, was very much more aerodynamic than a Jeep. So maybe they'll fix that in the labs.
Should we start Autonomy Markets labs? That's where we're going? Then we get a massive valuation?
I don't think, well, why? Yeah, first of all, Omega. You got to rename Omega to Omega Labs, because that is like the new buzzword to use. Just make your car work. Like, that's it. Don't worry about branding. Make your car work. Can we move on to the next topic?
Yes. So we're going to delivery bots. AV Ride, we got some news. They completed 600,000 autonomous delivery robot deliveries to date.
That's amazing. That's a lot. By the way, I was in Philly. I noticed an AV Ride delivery bot on the sidewalk. It was not on fire. No one was rolling it. No one was putting anything on it. I don't know if it was delivering a cheesesteak or not. I was actually on my way from Jim's, with Jim's on, I think it's 4th now, but Jim's, it was used to be on South Street and 3rd. Hopefully those things were heated, but it was safe there. So AV Ride continues to crank out there. Hopefully they didn't run through any bus stops while they were there.
I have another good friend from Philly. I had dinner with him 2 nights ago, and we were talking about this. He goes, man, they're all going to end up in the water. They're going in the river. They're going in. So I don't know. Is there something in the water there?
It was down by A Street, so, maybe less stuff there. The fills are doing okay. Maybe don't put those AV rides out after an Eagles game. That you're more likely to get taking, have things happen to them. But like AV Ride's pushing this out on their socials, no new information on Dallas. And what's also interesting is like, again, Tesla, right? They launch in Austin. You have people tweeting about it, people, filing their police reports about it. Have you heard anyone other than us, like, actually get in an AV Ride in Dallas? Like, is anyone talking about this? Like, they're literally, it's an autonomous partner of Uber. Is there any buzz at all about these cars being in Dallas? I mean, when I was there, I saw a citizen, civilian, whatever, not one specifically asking for an autonomy that got assigned one of these cars. Like, why is there no buzz?
That's the $1 million question. When I was there, I had to go to the police officer to find out where to go. There was an individual on X who posted about going. It's like, womp. But does Uber need to advertise that the fact that these vehicles are available in this market, or is Uber just looking at this and saying, okay, we're just increasing supply? Because you're right, there is zero buzz, there's zero chatter.
Well, I don't think they want to advertise based on the rides that you and I both had there and some of the incidents that they had there. So it's probably not something they want to advertise. I just think that it's fascinating. Look, they are a player in the market. They are quote unquote launched. Like, this is a launch. You go on your earnings call, you say this is a launch partner. I don't know. And are they even operating there? I don't know. Like, with all this NHTSA investigation and some of the issues there, are they continuing to test? And is Uber still assigning rides to AV Ride? Like, it would be great to know. For our friends in Dallas, we have many. Let us know. Try and hail a AV Ride if you can. Just change the settings in your app where you prefer autonomy. What was that hotel that we would go to that was a good spot to catch one?
The W across from where the Mavericks play. That was the spot. And that's where we were able to get it for high success rates.
There was a couple of spots there. Yeah. Let us know. Maybe we'll have to head back to Dallas. Great city to visit. Could be another excuse. We'll go to Phoenix, visit Alex, whether he decides to do test rides for us or not, and then hop over to Dallas afterwards. It'll be our next field trip. And you know what? Maybe head over to Austin and hang out with Jason.
We could do that. It's a great segue because our buddy David Moss was texting me, when's the next field trip? And he just went on a field trip. He went coast to coast in Canada with a team that included a gentleman by the name of Devin and a gentleman by the name of Spencer in 14.3.3, drove 3,760 miles, never touched the wheel once.
Wait a minute. Are these guys, are they Brazilian? They go by one name, Devin and Spencer? That sounds like a department store, Devin and Spencer.
Walt, they're in the high rent district. You got to get online with that.
3,760 miles. Congrats to David. It's good to see him testing the car. I said I hit 5,000 miles on my car. There was plenty of interventions there. I had my first intervention due to glare. Like, it was sun glare. I was on 95 and it was kind of at that time in the afternoon. I don't know. I think the glare was coming from behind, but so, like, I don't know how that works. Like, if I was fully autonomous and it's glare, is the thing going to pull over to the side of the road? Why didn't it automatically reset? They're not hitting the targets in terms of volume. So here's my complaints with Tesla, with FSD. We've been getting a lot of software. Like, it's not really changing. Maybe there's stuff from a safety happening in the background. I don't even know what software I'm on anymore. I just keep always updating it. Grayson, the navigation is not getting any better. Like, in fact, I think it in certain ways it's getting worse, in that, like, if you're on a highway and you're coming up to an exit I only go in hurry or Mad Max mode. It's like waiting to the last minute to try and get over to the lane. Like, just, dude, like, if you're within a 0.4 miles of the exit, get over. Like, what are you trying to do? I don't want to force. And there was a situation where I literally would have missed the turn had I not basically you can basically force over by putting your turn signal on. So I don't know what's going on at Tesla with the navigation. You got to fix it, because that's not good enough. It just isn't. And in terms of the overall progress, like, I don't know. Like, what do you think's going on there? There was a Reuters article. What did you learn from the Reuters article? I think you plugged that into Omega to fact check some of it.
We did plug it in to fact check it, and I gotta say this, and I know that you and Rich and Brandon at Lightshed talk about this. Anonymous sources. Wouldn't it be really nice if you could name who the individuals are and we can see it? To me, it was a biased hit piece that a lot of the stuff was, I don't want to say fabricated, but a lot of the stuff was an opinion more than actual fact. And it's a growing trend, unfortunately, that we have seen emerge. And if you follow some of the individuals on X, you can see some of the footage that they've been posting, and there's a track pattern there.
Yeah, look, it's Reuters. There's countless examples. Like there's certain authors and certain press outlets that we always put some level of skepticism on. So I didn't get a chance to read it because I'm not going to pay the $2 that it would cost to actually access that. I am happy though that Tesla is going out my driveway. And look, for those that are for any Tesla haters that are getting excited because I was ranting about some navigation, check out that new Glen explosion and tell me about how Elon can't do stuff. I've heard this before, as I've said many times in this podcast. Yeah, things are taking longer for sure. There's certainly frustrations, but 8% of my miles are on FSD. It's an amazing experience. It makes these 2.5, 3 hour drives that I have to do so much easier and safer for me to do. And we just hope that there's continued progress there, and we can get to a point where I can take a nap on 95 versus having to supervise it.
It's a matter of time till Tesla gets there. I've said this before, I'll say this again. They are going to crack it. And that new Glen explosion, I don't know if you've seen the video going around X from the JetBlue flight. Wow. That was like, wow.
Well, Grayson, in my coverage, SpaceX is going to be part of it. I already cover some space companies. There's competitors there. I mean, it's been a hell of a week for SpaceX in terms of new government contracts and competitors that are having some massive failures. And I remember, not to get off topic of autonomy, it wasn't long ago, people were telling me how the Starlink would never deliver connectivity under $1,000 for devices, but also never to planes. And here they're basically now on every major airline, and people are saying with anger to Delta, what the hell are you doing? Get Starlink on the plane. So look, rocket science is tough, and Amazon's learning that. It kind of I'm going to segue it back to autonomy. It's also kind of fascinating how much of a benefit of the doubt that Zoox is getting. And again, the both of us have been in, I think, more autonomous cars than the average human. And again, we're positive for everyone. We want everyone to succeed. It is the worst, literally the worst experience of the autonomy cars and trucks that I've been in. So it's bizarre that they're getting cut so much slack of being okay, they're right on the cusp. They're not on the cusp. Go to Vegas, get in one of these things, try it for yourself. This technology is behind nearly every one of the companies that we've talked about on this podcast.
Yeah, I did a field report on it recently about it, and they are behind. I'll ask you from a cover standpoint, is that because they're part of Amazon? And I've asked individuals, it's just a rounding error. Is that why they get this pass?
The answer is it's Amazon. And okay, an important part of this for sure is the ability to get financing. And the theory is that, okay, Amazon's just going to keep dumping more and more money. Let's keep in mind that Zoox insisted for some time that this was an independent, they're going to have their own app. So there's already been a pivot where they're going to go into the Uber app, which I think it could be an early signal about, whether they have that same type of support internally or not for their original plan. But again, I think that's why they're going to get the shout out, because it's Amazon, and Amazon deserves that amount of respect, even though they just blew up their New Glenn rocket.
Without Amazon, they wouldn't be in business today. That's my take on it. That's what's keeping it afloat.
Yeah, they're the ones that they're the ones that gave them the money in the first place, and they continued to fund it. But we'll see.
We'll see. It'd be very nice, before we move on international, if Andy Jassy, an Amazon executive, would make a public statement about it on the earnings call and give us some insight. That would be very nice, just saying.
Good luck with that. That's not happening. All right, what do we have on the foreign autonomy desk, Grayson?
BYD is building its own autonomous driving chip, which has entered mass production. The company aims to invest $14.75 billion US into its intelligent technology R&D over the next 3 years. And if you buy BYD with God's eye and something happens, they're willing to give you a year's compensation.
That's great, right? I mean, I think that's that second part, I think is fascinating. Their willingness, and we're trying to understand how this market plays out. Obviously, the Robotaxi is the easy one because the Robotaxi takes on that liability. You get to the next thing in terms of private ownership, where they're willing to take on those losses. That gets back to my Tesla thing. I want to take that nap, on 95, on the way to Philly. Who's taking liability if something happens? And I think this BYD is kind of early signal on how that may play out.
It's an early signal, and I'll say it's something to watch. What do we have on deck for next week, Walt?
We have the month of June, Grayson. We made it to June. 30 days left on the Tesla 500 car prediction. Ain't going to happen. I'm going to get a haircut on Tuesday. But beyond that, investor meetings. So, you never know what news. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of news coming out of SpaceX. Part of the things that kind of rolls into autonomy markets is timing, if and when SpaceX buys Tesla or vice versa.
I'll tell you something. You can't turn on CNBC without hearing that every day. The future is bright. The future, Thomas. The future is scaling. Walt, until next week.